Hey guys, in a bunch of previous videos, I showed you what you would usually find prepped in my fridge. So this is dill, we have carrots, parsley, cauliflower. This is chicken that I showed you guys that I pull off of the chicken when I'm making my broth. This is my brown rice that I cooked in the chicken broth. And then this, of course, is our gorgeous liquid gold chicken broth. So celery I usually have in my fridge. It lasts for a while. I usually don't chop this up ahead of time just because it's so easy to do. Normally, the different kind of things that I have prepped are stuff that, you know, they're kind of annoying to wash and then dry, or they take a little bit more time. Those are the ones that I normally have prepped and ready to go because those are usually the first ones to be like, nah, I don't feel like preparing those. You know what I mean? So those are the ones, knowing myself and knowing, you know, when you have a busy schedule, you want to have those ready to go. So those are the easiest to use. So this recipe I make all the time for my family and myself. Bring it to work. My daughter loves it. My husband loves it. Friends that come over, I can easily heat it up for them. It's just such a great recipe that's so easy to make. And the reason why I love it is because a lot of the components are usually already in my fridge. And the main component, which is the broth, I always have in my fridge or definitely my freezer. So this is something that I like to make a lot. First things first. We're gonna get the broth going and heat it up because I like to flavor it first with a little bit of chopped garlic and a shallot, which my mom calls a shallot because she says things to make them sound fancier. So I actually grew up my whole life calling these a shallot, fancy. So shallot, shallot, tomato, whatever you call this little guy is what we're gonna put in the soup. So let's chop this. Whenever I'm cooking, whether it's like taco meat or a stir fry or, you know, a soup like this, I always add chopped garlic and shallot. I don't know, it's a really nice base flavor. And when you cook them down, they're really mild, and shallots, sorry, my mom says shallots, so it's just like in my brain. Then when they cook down, they get like sweet, they're really yummy. I didn't bring my chopper with me today. So we're gonna do this the old-fashioned way. I know my last prepping video, I had a big old Band-Aid on my finger, which, by the way, I talked to one of my friends who's a chef, and he did confirm that that is the sign of a true chef, is Band-Aids on your finger, just saying. Okay, so we have our little shallot, jeez. My mother would call paper towels toweling. My mom has these words for things that I grew up that never like questioned it. I'm like, oh yeah, cool, toweling. Anyway, so now it's forever ingrained in my mind as toweling. At first, maybe I was like, maybe it's a Jersey thing. It's not a Jersey thing. It's a Marjorie thing. So we're gonna give this garlic, same thing, little mince, and let it just kind of cook and start flavoring the broth. So this shallot, actually, it was a pretty big one. So I only like to use about, you know, maybe a tablespoon of chopped shallot. So shallot. So I'm just gonna do something like that. So now we're gonna put the broth into a pot. We're gonna put the shallot, okay. So we're gonna put the broth into the pot. We're gonna put in the shallot and the garlic, and we're gonna let it start simmering. Again, cooking with stuff that you already have prepared makes life so easy. And again, chicken soup, before I learned how easy this was to make, you really do think it's like some crazy gourmet thing that you can't do. And it's just so not true, and it's so nutritious. It just totally fuels you for the day. It nourishes your kids, your friends, your family. It's awesome. Let's put a little bit, you know what, I'm just gonna dump this whole thing in here because it's actually a good amount for this. Okay, so now just take your garlic and your chopped shallot. Then whenever I make a soup, I always season it with Bragg's amino acids. I just love it. It's a great alternative to soy, like soy sauce. But it has a very similar flavor, and I just love the flavor that it gives to soup, and I cook with it a lot. And then umi plum vinegar, you guys know I love this. The umboshi. Have we figured out how to pronounce that yet? We should. Umboshi plum. And then I'm just gonna let this simmer for a few minutes, let the garlic and the shallot kind of cook down and start flavoring the broth. So bring it to a boil and then turn it down to a simmer and just let it kind of do its thing for, you know, probably 3 to 5 minutes. And then we're going to do the next step with the vegetables. Okay, so our broth has been cooking away here for about 5 minutes and it smells so yummy. Okay, so these vegetables cook at different times, right? So, you know, carrots, because they're so dense, they take the longest. Cauliflower probably takes the next amount of time, then celery. And then the things that I already have cooked and the herbs, I put in at the end. Also, these carrots, this is just what's prepped in the fridge, but for the soup, I'll probably only use about half of these. And maybe about, I don't know, a quarter of this. So, and also if you have other vegetables prepped in your fridge, if you have broccoli in there or whatever, I mean, experiment and try throwing those in the soup. I mean, a lot of times I will pack this with vegetables. But these are just the standards that are usually in my fridge. Okay, cool. So these are a little thick, so you want to cut them a little thinner. Sometimes what I'll do is with the soup, I'll just make them a little bit smaller. But again, when the vegetables are prepped in my fridge, I use them for so many different things that I'll keep them. And also sometimes, you know, I'll keep the carrots whole too. And then whatever you're making, whatever dish you're making, then just adjust, you know, just adjust the shape, the size. You're so much more inclined to cook healthy stuff if this is all just sitting in there waiting for you. Because also when you have a soup, you don't want the carrots to be mushy, but you still want them to, you know, be cooked through. So when you're chewing, you don't, you know, when you're eating your soup, you don't chomp down on a really hard carrot. That's why I try to kind of time it out a little bit. Okay, so that looks like a nice amount. So let's see if I'll need to add more. So we're just going to pop this right in, let it start cooking. Okay, in the meantime, let's move on to the cauliflower. So again, I'll probably just use about maybe a quarter of this. So for soup, I'll cut it to like a nice little pretty floret. If I'm making a stir fry, I'll, you know, keep it a little bigger. This kind of chicken soup, because of all the different vegetables and the actual cooked chicken, very rarely do I cook chicken and then freeze the cooked chicken. I usually just freeze raw chicken and then thaw that out and then cook it. But it's kind of rare that I cook chicken in something and then freeze it after. So this soup, not that it lasts a while anyway in my house, but I rarely freeze this one. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Let's add a little bit more. Cauliflower also adds such a nice density. I love this vegetable. It's so versatile. It takes on any flavor you're cooking with. It's so hearty. I just love it. Let's add a little bit more. Okay, great. So the carrots have been cooking for a few minutes. I'm going to add the cauliflower. We're going to let this all cook. And then the celery I can put in pretty quickly. So I'm going to go ahead and get that prepped. So celery, as I said, I don't really pre-chop, but I do love celery in soups. It adds such a beautiful flavor. So let's give these a little rinse. Another thing too is whenever I'm using celery, I hate when I bite into it and you get that like string in your teeth. So I was always taught that when you're using celery, you always want to get the strings out. Whoop. So that stuff you don't want to bite into and get in your teeth. So you just do both ends and you get those strings off. See that? So whenever you go and get like a crudité or a crudité, and you bite into the celery and these strings that caught in your teeth, they didn't do this trick. So I love little tricks like this. So again, whenever you think about a chicken soup, you know, normally the celery is like a cute little size like that. So that's what we want to do. The other thing too is because my daughter is a toddler, when I make her this soup, I'll take my chicken shears and I'll just chop up the vegetables a little bit, which I can show you how I do that later. because then the soup's like super versatile. Okay, so we'll just let that all cook. Now that's basically the bulk of the vegetables that I put in there. So I'm gonna let that just kind of sit for a few minutes. And then all these other things, the herbs are, you know, these are all ready to go. So those will put in at the end with this stuff that's already prepped. Such an easy recipe. So we'll be right back in like a few minutes. So the cauliflower, the celery, and the carrots have all been cooking for probably 5 minutes. And this stuff cooks quickly. That's why I love this recipe. Okay, so everything else is pretty much ready to go. So now all we're gonna do is put it into the pot, stir it, and this recipe's basically done. Love that. Okay, so this is our brown rice that we made. So I'm just gonna add a cup to the soup. You can always add a little bit later. I just start with a cup. Okay, the next thing we're gonna do, this is the chicken that we pulled off while we were cooking the broth. Again, because I use these things for multiple recipes, I don't necessarily use all of it. I just use a portion of it. So this I can save for maybe a stir fry or something. So now we'll just give this a coarse chop. This is our beautiful organic chicken that we pulled off of the broth. Okay, we're just gonna throw this into the pot. Give it a little stir. That is looking like an amazing chicken soup. So now what we're gonna do is, I add Italian flat leaf parsley to everything. It's such a great neutral herb that I love. It's not too overpowering, but you guys know I love adding fresh herbs to anything because it makes it very fancy and gourmet. At least that's what I was taught, and I totally agree. Okay, so I love fresh herbs, and parsley is one that I find it's kind of hard to overdo. I'm still careful with how much I use. As example, I love adding dill to my chicken soup. It adds such a wonderful flavor, but dill can be really overpowering, so you want to just use a little bit. I would actually make this without adding dill first, and then try a version where you add it. But I know that I love it. I know my family loves it, so I'm gonna add a little bit. Okay, just give the parsley a little chop. Put that into the soup. And last, a little bit of dill. Again, a little bit goes a long way. And it also looks so beautiful in the soup. I love it. One of my favorite restaurants in New York is this place called ABC Kitchen. I love it. I don't go there that often. It's like a thing. It's like a to-do when you go there. But the food is beautiful, and they have this chicken soup with dill in it, and it's so wonderful. That's actually where I got the idea. Also, my mother makes an incredible matzo ball soup, and she would put so much dill in it. It was amazing. And her matzo balls are wonderful. They never sank. They always floated at the top. Her recipe was insane. And now she can't find it, and she doesn't remember the recipe. I'm so bummed. I'm on a mission to find it. Okay, cool. So now that's there. Because, as I mentioned, I don't put a lot of salt and pepper in my broth. I'm gonna add a little bit of salt and pepper because we added a ton of these vegetables. So just for a little bit more flavor, you wanna add a little salt and pepper. Again, because my daughter eats this, I won't put too much in. And then as I individually kind of heat it up for different meals, I'll add it, you know. But for right now, I'll just put a little bit. Okay, a little pepper. Let all those flavors meld together. And because the chicken and the rice is cooked and herbs just, I mean, they cook in a second. Now it's pretty much ready to go. Amazing. Okay, cool. This is so awesome. I love this soup so much. So this is just an example of, just so you can see what it looks like, your beautiful chicken soup. The other thing I want to show you too is, you know, when I heat this up for my daughter, you know, because she's younger, if you have younger kids, what I'll do is I'll take my chicken scissors. I cook so much with these chicken shears. I absolutely love them. And they come apart and you can throw them in the dishwasher. I love these things. So what I'll do is I'll just take her stuff and I'll just chop it up. So it's like super small, you know, because she's, you know, chewing now, but I still just don't like, you know, anything bigger than, you know, a little chunk like that. So I'll usually just cut it up. So that is an example of, you know, one of her meals. She loves this soup. So then I'll heat it up for myself. I'll bring it to work. I'll put it in a thermos and then I'll just have it. So you get the idea. I'll just cut up all the big chunks for her. And this is a great meal for her. I also will toast bread for her. And then she's been having this broth. As soon as her pediatrician okayed it, I've been giving her broth. So she loves this stuff. So I'll toast some bread and I'll butter it. And then she can, you know, dip the bread in there. And then she's, you know, a whole meal is ready to go for her. And then there's actually still a bunch of soup left in here. So this soup is so great to prep ahead. And it's so good for multiple meals. And it's so nutritious. I hope you guys like this recipe and subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications so you know when I put on a new video. And yeah, let me know what you guys think. Let me know what you want help prepping with. And I'm so happy that you guys are loving these videos. Thank you for watching.